This is Things Police See, First-Hand Accounts, with your host, Steve Gold.
Hey guys, welcome to the podcast that interviews active and retired police officers about their most intense, bizarre, and sometimes humorous moments on the job. With me as always, Ken Roybal. How you doing?
Hello. I'm here. First thing in the morning. Had some little Skype issues, and I think we've fixed that. So
yeah, you sound wonderfully unlaggy.
I feel unlaggy. I do. It helped me out a lot.
Sound good. Yeah, well, just for people out there that use Skype, just so you know, I have the Mac version, and it alerted me I needed to update, and Ken has the PC version, did not alert him.
Because, I don't need to know. I just lag. And William James Long, thank you for letting me know how laggy I am, and that actually prompted us to check that. So good on you, William.
It was a bit of tough love, Ken. We had a really fun Zoom call with some folks from police background and TPS fan page, and William is a big fan and a good dude. We really appreciate his support, and he said, "Yeah, I meant to ask you guys, do you even listen to your own podcast?" And I was like, "Ooh, what is he going to say next?"
You're awful.
Yeah, you guys are terrible.
Well, it's kind of funny. It's that you'd think that, I don't know, they would tell you your call quality is low or whatever, but no, you have to have fans tell you how bad your interviews are, and then you have to do your own homework. And I went to Skype, and it says, "Yeah, we're up and running, man. We're just amazing. You?" And when I go, "No, I'm not amazing," and then I check the version online, because there's nothing on the software that says, "Hey, check what version you have." So they didn't make it easy, but we took care of business.
We overcame, as we always do.
Yeah. So who's on the hot seat today?
Today we have William Field Cross, but he goes by Field, and he's 12 years, been a police officer.
12 years old.
He's 12 years old, very young. They're having a very difficult time recruiting. So this guy's been, he's currently a Halifax County sheriff in Halifax County, Virginia, and he has a really badass dog. He has a Bloodhound, which I've always been a big fan of when it comes to police canines.
Yeah, Virginia's getting a little bit hammered. I know we're ahead of the on the calendar, but yeah, they're having a bad time right now.
Oh, I didn't even see it with the virus.
Yeah, they're locked down for a month longer than everybody else.
Ooh, brutal.
Yeah,
cool. We can ask him about that. See what that's like.
Yeah, that's pretty sucky, but yeah, okay.
All right, so Field, and I'm doing something new here, folks. So I can edit it out if it doesn't work right, but forgive us if there's any bumps. I'm gonna try to have everybody on their own channel, because we have this fancy Rode Procaster mixing board, which allows us to do that. So, and that way I can edit more easily. So
we are fans. And what you're trying to say is that way, fans, we can cut out Ken altogether.
Ken was glitchy, so he was cut out. All right, let's see if he's going to answer here.
All right.
Hello?
Field.
Hey.
What's up, brother? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, how about you can hear me?
Yeah, you sound good, man. I got a text from you just before we started, said that you had an F3 and an F4 tornado running around your house.
Yeah.
Those would be children, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Okay. Not actual tornadoes.
No.
You are also on with Ken Roybal.
Hey, Ken.
Good morning.
How are you?
I thought it was a tornado. I thought they were tornadoes. I'm good, man. I'm good. We're doing all right here, as long as we stay in our houses, right?
That's what they say.
So, Field, Ken was just saying before we dialed you up that the virus is pretty bad in Virginia right now. What are you experiencing on the job?
Well, I actually I'm actually been out of work since May 10th. I broke my finger fighting a guy, and I had to get a surgery on it. So I got 2 plates and 4 screws in my finger right now. going through therapy. So I picked a good time in the history of the world to actually not have to go to work.
Yeah, really.
But so my area right now, we're a pretty rural community, so we only have one official documented case of it. I've talked to some of the ER staff, and they're not testing everybody, I don't think. So they're getting a few people coming in with the symptoms, but they're just basically quarantining, telling them to self-quarantine. So we've only got one official case here. We've got, I think, 9 in the county next to us, and a couple in the county east of us. But I think Richmond and the northern part of Virginia is really getting hit pretty hard with it.
Oh, gotcha. And I see here in your bio that
what I was telling. Oh, good.
Oh, I think we're having a poor connection again. But I was just saying, in your bio, the dog that you have is awesome. I love, because when you see canines working in police work, it's usually a German Shepherd or now those Malinois or whatever. But you have a Bloodhound, man. Those dogs are just so awesome.
Yeah, they're tracking machines.
Now, are you the guy that when like someone gets out of jail, like that song Red, that country song Red?
Yeah.
Is that you? Do you hunt these guys down?
Yeah. We've actually been on 2 escaped inmates. Well, my last Bloodhound, we had 2 escaped inmates at separate times, and we were part of the teams that found them. The first one took us 2 or 3 days, and then the second one we captured that night. I was the first dog deployed. We went about 5 miles, got to a big creek we couldn't cross, and another Bloodhound set up on it on the other side of the big creek, and they found him about 200 yards past that.
Wow. No, the Bloodhounds, they don't, there was one in the town next to me back in Massachusetts, in a small town, but they use them primarily for tracking. There wasn't they never bite or anything or.
Well, I have seen some ferocious Bloodhounds, but they're few and far between. I got a buddy that's got a Bloodhound in Georgia, and he can't even give that dog a bath. It's so mean.
Really?
So, yeah. There's one in a couple counties over from us that has been through, I think, 4 handlers because it just bites everybody. So there's a few out there that are ferocious, but everybody I train with, and if they get a vicious one, they'll usually wash it out. They won't even train it.
Yeah, that makes sense because they're what I knew about the only Bloodhound I've ever known in police work. He would even if he found a bad guy, he would just put his paws on him. He would he never really bit, and he was great for finding kids and like elderly people. Mm-hmm. Do they do drugs ever?
I've never seen one do drugs. I mean, I imagine you could train it to do drugs, but their thing is that it's part of their hunting nature is to track. So all we do is just change their prey drive from an animal to change it to hunting humans. Really, that's kind of what we do, and just instill on them the human scent, the skin cells. That's what we train them to do.
That's really cool. A friend of mine described it as, and you can correct me if this isn't right, but he said it's kind of like humans are always just cascading skin cells off their body, and it's like forming little piles on the ground. And that's what that's like blows your mind when you think that a dog's nose can actually smell those.
Yeah, the way I describe it, because we give a lot of demonstrations with the Bloodhounds, the way I describe it is, you remember when we were kids, you take those smoke bombs that were different colors. So, and that you would light them on the 4th of July and you put them on the ground and they would just create a big plume of smoke.
Oh yeah.
So what I tell people is if you lit one of those and you put it on the top of your head and you just walked, you could actually it kind of is a good description of what those skin cells are doing. They come off in rafts, they call them, and they come up your neck and over your head and kind of plume down, kind of like almost the atomic bomb circle, and they fall to the ground. And the dog is actually, as those skin cells are decaying, he's smelling all that comes through there. And there's a lot of different variables as far as soaps you use, your DNA, but ultimately at the end of the day, they can differentiate between my skin sells, your skin sells, and we can give them a shirt or any type of clothing or really anything that the person's touched. If we had a guy one time, he robbed a store and he put 75 cents on the counter, and we used that 75 cents to send up on it, and we ended up finding the guy in a housing complex, about a half a mile away. So anything that anybody has touched where skin cells stay is we can send up off of that.
Wow, that's really cool. That's insane.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, actually. And we can also do it like the Belgian Malinois and the German Shepherds, where if somebody takes off running and the officer says he went through the woods right there, then we can scent the dog up right there and he'll take it. So they can do both. They're scent specific, where we can give them a shirt, or we can just cast them, is what we call it. Cast them in the area and they'll pick up that scent. And a lot of times, if it's somebody running, there's a fear scent. My apologies. That there's a fear scent that the adrenaline is pumping, and so that dog likes that adrenaline, and he's going to go after that harder, kind of like a deer when they're running and after they. Yeah. So I'm not a hunter, but everybody that hunts says a deer that gets shot running with when they run the dogs after him, when that meat tastes different. It's that adrenaline running through the deer's bone, the deer's muscles. So it's the same concept with the dog, that fear scent is a much stronger than an elderly person with Alzheimer's walking through the woods. So that's actually a harder track for the dog because it's less boring, I guess you would say.
Wow, that's blowing my mind, man. I've done a bunch of tracks when I was a cop, and I've seen them use scent, like here's his sweatshirt, find this guy. But I never thought to ask, like, when they show up and they have nothing and they just start tracking. Now I know that's fascinating. They can just pick that stuff up. Ken, did LAPD did they ever have any bloodhounds?
I don't remember them having any bloodhounds. I don't know if they do now, but I don't. Yeah, you know what? When people are missing or whatever, I don't know how they did that. I never heard anything about it.
LA just doesn't look for them.
We just, we figure, hey, we're going to find them at some point, but yeah,
they'll turn up.
It's amazing. I've seen bloodhounds track right through the middle of a Walmart parking lot in the middle of the day, and they're picking out that one scent that we've given them, and they're going through the parking lot and they can find that one scent. It's unreal.
At Walmart, there's a lot of stinky scents there.
Yeah, it's millions and millions of skin cells. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing to watch those dogs work.
Wow, that is fascinating, man. Field, can you tell us about your first time responding to a hot call? First time your adrenaline got pumping?
Yeah, well, I thought about this, and the first one I ever did, when I started in law enforcement, it was actually my birthday, August 3rd, I think it was 2008. I was in the jail. I worked in the jail at a local sheriff's office. So a lot of times we would start in the jail and then you would work your way up to the road. Well, this night, sometimes the jail officers would ride with a deputy, and I was just riding, kind of learning, just trying to get everything I could. And we got a call that a female had been shot. Well, her boyfriend shot her in the leg with a shotgun from about 3 foot away.
Dang.
And he told her, he said, I'm going to give you to the count of 3 to get out of here. And he said 1, and as she turned to run, he shot her in the leg.
Oh,
and went through one leg, and you could see the pellets in the other leg. And this is granted, I started law enforcement April 1st, 2008, and this was August. So I was green. I knew nothing. I don't even think I'd been to the academy yet. And I was like, this is getting real. So we get there, and obviously I don't know what to do. So I just kind of follow the deputy that I'm with. And I'll never forget it. When I walked up the steps, there was a big old piece of meat sitting on the front steps. And I was like, the only thing I could think of was, this sucks. This has got to suck, And so we go inside, and there's blood everywhere, and it's got that copper smell. And she's laying on the table, and that was probably my first official. That was my first official, like, oh gosh, this is real. This isn't the movies anymore. So, but But
I'm surprised she was able to run.
Well, she didn't run. So as she was turning to run is when he shot her. So he said, "I'm gonna give you the count of 3," and he got to 1, and then he pulled the trigger.
He's like the guy from Home Alone.
Yeah.
This is no time for humor.
So that was probably my first official, like, I knew nothing then, and come to find out, so they were, we did a quick clearing of the building, and we were kind of all standing around like, all right, this guy, we've been told this guy is here, this guy is there. Well, me and the guy that I was with, we were sent to go check this suspicious person that they thought was him. So we were riding over there, and as we're riding over there, they say suspect in custody. So they ended up going in the house again and looking for the man to see if they had missed him. And the guy was underneath a bed with the shotgun that he had used in one of the rooms of the house. And we had been standing around for 30, 45 minutes, just kind of, how we do after everything is secured. We stand around and wait for the people that know what they're doing to get there. So that was a pretty uneasy feeling to know that guy was in the next room laying under the bed with a shotgun, and we were all standing around.
Saying God knows what, right?
Yeah.
Wow, so, that's crazy.
So that was my first official, hot call, as being with somebody.
Yeah,
that was a big welcome.
Yeah.
It was wild. I'll never forget it. It was my birthday, August 3rd, too. I'll never forget it.
You had a couple beers that night.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was wild. It was wild.
Now, Ken, because I know you so well, I know the light bulb went off in your head when he said that he was working without police academy at that time. Ken, Field, you have to understand, Ken, like LA is a big city, obviously, and it does everything like very by the book. I come from an agency very similar to you where on the East Coast, they'll work you. Like I worked with Reserve Academy, which is like 100-hour academy. I worked for a full year in a patrol car alone as a police officer.
That's wild.
I mean, they've changed all that now, but we used to just take reserves or specials, and once you got sworn in at town hall, you could hit the road after training, after some field training, and then go to academy later when the town could afford to send you. Now, with you guys, did they always have you partnered up? Yeah.
So when shortly after that situation happened, the sheriff was like, all right, no more. If you're not road certified and you work in a jail, there's no more riding. I guess he kind of realized that if I would have gotten shot and killed, we would have probably been in a bad situation right then. So when I went to the road at a new department, we actually rode. So they had 2 academies a year. I think one started in January, one started in June. We went about 6 months, not quite. But so when I went over there, I got hired in October, and I rode with a partner until January. But we had guys that were rode with somebody that was probably there 8-10 months. I think at that time you had to be certified in 12 months is kind of what they said. And you rode with somebody, you wore a uniform. I believe that agency has stopped that now. Now you get a college shirt and khakis, and you kind of go working records or help in the evidence room or something like that. I'm not quite sure what they do now, but I do know they've stopped that practice.
What do you think about that? Ken does not like that, right, Ken?
Well, I'm kind of wondering, what does certified mean?
So to be certified, we have to go through
Hello?
Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
And to be certified, we have to go through an academy, which usually I think they range from academy to academy, but it's usually from anywhere from 26 to 36 weeks academies. And then you have to complete your FTO training, and then you're officially certified.
Well, that's a pretty lengthy academy, then 26 weeks.
Virginia has a very long academy. I talked to guys at training that from other states, and they're 12, 14 weeks, 16 weeks. And our state police academy is 30 something weeks, I believe. And it's a long process in Virginia to be certified.
Yeah, it sounds like, I think Mass is like 25 weeks. But 26 to 30 something. Woo. That's a
Yeah,
lot.
I think it just depends on agency, because our academies are split up into regional academies. So a group of 10 departments or 20 departments will send their officers or deputies to one academy. Now the big cities, Richmond and Fairfax, they have their own academies, but for the most part, all of these smaller agencies they have a regional academy that they send their officers and deputies to.
That makes sense. Yeah, that's how we used to do it. None of our towns and cities were really big enough to have their own. So I went to police academy with, I think there's like 40 or 50 guys in my class, and there was a dozen different cities in the class, which was kind of cool to do. But
yeah, because you learn a lot, you meet a lot of people and network that way pretty well.
Absolutely. Field, can you describe the strangest or most bizarre call that you've dealt with?
I actually have two of them that I was thinking about. So this was when I was on my road by myself. We get a call to a drunk person, and I was running a different beat, but we usually, when we were slow or bored, you get a drunk person stumbling down the road. Everybody kind of wants to go get nosy and see what it is. So we went by car number. So I was car 17, and all of a sudden I heard the female car 19. She comes on the radio and she says, 17, you need to get here now. So I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going on? So I get there, and this woman, she's from New York. She's got that thick New York accent. She's a really Christian woman. You never heard her talk bad about people. And we get there, and the guy he's got that. I walk up to him, he's got that 1,000-yard stare, like that drunk stare where he doesn't even know what world he's on, and his pants were down between his legs, like down to his ankles.
Oops.
I'm like, oh gosh. So we get him up and we get him handcuffed. And in Virginia we have what's called a drunken public law. So if you're intoxicated in public, then you go to jail. Basically, we don't have a drunk take, so they just put you in holding until you sober up, and then they release you, and it's like a $50 civil fine. So we get him up, and I've got one arm, and another officer that gets there has got another arm. And we're like, hey, will you pull his pants up, talking to the female? So all of a sudden she says, he's got poop on his pants, just like that. And I turn around and look, and there is a waterfall of diarrhea coming off the curb.
Oh, geez.
So
those are the best.
So we just drop him in the middle of the road. I mean, I'll never forget it. He's laying in the road with handcuffs, and I'm gagging and throwing up in the yard of the house, in the front yard of the house. The other officer, he's throwing up in the other, because that's when we all smell it, and as soon as she says something, she's gagging. So we finally, we leave our gloves. We finally get them loaded up into a car. Everybody's got streaks of diarrhea on their pants because we didn't know when we got there.
Yikes.
So we left our gloves in the yard of the house we were at. And the officer that I told the guy, I said, I can't transport him. I'm going to throw up. So he transports him to the jail, and it was just a mess. I ended up going to the hospital and getting some of those rags that kill everything, and basically bathing in them. And later on that evening, I gloved up and went and got new gloves and cleaned up the front yard where we left all the trash. But that was pretty bizarre. That was a pretty bizarre incident.
Yeah. What was his problem?
He was really, really drunk. I mean, like he was just very intoxicated, and he was actually. So we kind of had, our city was divided into different areas, and there's a they call it kind of like the river area or whatever, where they have restaurants and stuff. And I think he had just got intoxicated at one of those restaurants and was walking home, and I can't believe he made it as far as he did, but he was just really, really drunk.
Could have been Mexican food.
Yeah,
it could have been. Well,
I think I had a bad taco.
Yeah, too many tacos and too many margaritas will do it, I guess.
Yeah, that is not a good mix. That is not a good mix.
Ken, do you see what your food is doing to white people?
Well, you know what? It's a plan. It's a master plan of ours to thin out the herd. And the white people like their alcohol, and we like our Mexican food, and together it's a lethal combination. So
Montezuma's revenge.
That's right. You don't want that, but yeah, bad.
Oh, man, that is a bad one, man. I'm with you, brother. I have a very weak gag reflex, and once it starts, I've been on a few calls. Once it starts going, I just can't stop it.
I can see it. I can see it. I can watch it happen, but the moment I smell it, I'm done. I can't do it anymore. And you get a lot of those smells working in the jail. So I spend a lot of time making that gag reflex noise. But
I'm sure the inmates make you special surprises sometimes for you to enjoy.
Where I was at wasn't too bad because it was an old, if you think about just an old school jail, it had a couple catwalks. Everybody was in cell blocks. It was pretty small. It held probably 200 people. But it was so local that 3 older ladies that lived in the community were the cooks. So every other Sunday they'd get fried chicken. And then the other Sundays it'd be roast beef and gravy. So, they ate really well. So they really didn't give us a whole bunch of problems because they ate really well at this jail. And we got to eat for $1. So that was kind of nice too. But
nice.
Yeah, that was pretty bad. That one. And I was thinking about another one that we had. We had this was actually at the agency that I'm at now. They had a call of a wreck at Walmart, and I was sitting in front of Walmart and I was looking around. I was like, "There's no wreck down here." And I looked down and there's a crowd of people, and this guy had a seizure, and he accelerated and hit a bunch of cars, and he hit one of those handicap signs with the concrete base. He flipped the car, and it ended up halfway ejecting him, and he ended up passing away in the parking lot. And that was really bizarre, but a situation that I can't believe he didn't hit anybody else. He went through the part where everybody was walking in, the main traffic, and that was wild too. That was a very bizarre incident that's probably one of the ones that's really stuck with me.
Yeah, were you the first one to show up?
Yeah, I was probably right there pulling in with the fire department. I was when the call came out, I was actually in front of Walmart, and I was like, "There's no wreck." So I kind of went up a little ways, to say, well, maybe it's down this way. And the fire department passed me, so I turned back around and had no idea it was in the parking lot at Walmart.
Wow.
Yeah, it was an overturned vehicle at Walmart. Well, it was definitely an overturned vehicle at Walmart.
What killed the guy? Was it did he get crushed? Did he hit his head?
Well, he hit his face on the asphalt and then slid about 20 foot.
So not to get gross or anything like that, but I think for the listeners, we have a lot of people on here that listen that want to be cops, and was it like? Not, you know what? I guess I'm just asking. Was like a cheese grater on the guy's face, and half his face was gone? What did you see?
It was flat. Half of his face was flattened. I mean, it was just, and his teeth were hanging out. I remember his teeth just kind of like bulging out from his face, and he just had half of a head. Really, the other half had been left on the asphalt.
Yikes.
Did that affect you going down the road years later, or because that's a PTSD thing for me?
Yeah, not really. I have everybody calls themselves a shit magnet, and I'm actually very lucky. I'm one of those guys, like, if it's going to happen, it usually doesn't happen while I'm working. And I use this all the time. I tell people it might change tomorrow, but in 12 years, I've worked one suicide. And it's not because I haven't gone to them. It's just they don't ever come out while I'm working. And so I've been obviously I've seen, we had a guy not too long ago get his head crushed by a tractor. It flipped on him, and, I had to work that. But, it doesn't affect me too much unless it's got something to do with kids. I do a pretty good job of, separating the ones that are helpless. I guess I try to think about it. The ones that are helpless are the ones that affect me more. And and that's really come through since I've got kids. We've adopted 3 kids, so my wife and I. So I've seen where they come from, kind of where that situation, and that's what really bothers me, is the helpless victims. Not that these people that were killed weren't helpless, but I don't know. Maybe sometimes I feel like they can control their own destiny a little better than the kids can.
Oh yeah, that totally makes sense. I was not the same. I was always affected by just seeing the human body in an unnatural way, like just something that bent away. It's not supposed to be bent, a head misshapen, like anything like that used to bug me for a while. Drove me nuts. So consider yourself blessed, my friend.
Yeah, I don't know. It might come back one day to haunt me. They might all come back one day, but I really do a good job of putting it out of my head. Now, the guy that got his head crushed by a tractor, he was actually a friend of ours, and I didn't know it until after about 15 minutes after working it, and that affected me more because we knew him. He was a good man, and everybody and a lot of deputies knew him, and everybody on my shift would eat lunch with him, and when we'd see him, so that was a little bit tougher because we knew him. He was a good staple of the community, and people cared about him, and he cared about people and always talked to us. So that was tough. That was a tough one, but once again, I don't know. I guess I do a pretty good job of just trying to worry about the things that I can control and not the things I can't.
Yeah, everybody's different. Like my dad was a cop for 32 years, and he could have been eating an Italian sub at a gruesome suicide, and just his heart rate wouldn't even go up. And then I'm his son, but I have more of my mom in me, so those things used to bang around in my head. Just funny how everybody processes things differently.
And my wife, I can't talk to her about it because she hears one thing about it and then it affects her. She doesn't like to hear about any of that stuff. She's like, stop. And I don't even talk to her about it because it affects her more than it affects me. And I guess maybe because she can't control it and she's not there to kind of to see what I'm seeing. I don't know.
That's tough, man. Cause you definitely, and I know exactly what you're saying. At times when I would overshare with my wife, I knew it was, it was helping me to vent a little, but it was being detrimental to her psyche. I could just see it. Like she's like, oh, and
she actually knew the man that the tractor flipped on him. She knew him very well, so it really affected her. So we didn't talk about it. I just told her it wasn't good and kind of left it at that. And it didn't last long type situation, but it was a sad thing. It was.
Yeah, absolutely.
That whole compartmentalizing things is very good for police officer survival, but then on the other hand, it's very bad because it's still in there, and for cops have to not eat them up secretly, or silently, and because it can be unhealthy, or it can be, there are just people that are able to do that, but it's always going to be in there somewhere, and you somehow have to get that out of you, but it's just it's a tough balancing act for cops.
A good thing about what's fortunate for me is being that I've got the Bloodhound, so I've got a training group that we meet outside of the county. And I think that's we really train hard and do a lot of work, but it's a good time for us to kind of vent and get our, we get it out there. We talk there. I've got a really good friend that, we share a lot of, stuff about it. And it I think that's where you get it. And then on top of it, when you start getting upset or it starts to affect you, you've got dogs there. So they just, it just makes everything that much better whenever you can take your dog and sometimes you talk to them and they don't talk back and or anything, but it just gets your mind off of things.
That's a good point, man. There's like study after study that shows how companionship from specifically a dog really does alleviate a lot of mental ailments.
Yeah, I mean, I tell you, I couldn't imagine doing this job without a dog. You know, I was one of those ones growing up. I had no intention on being a police officer or in law enforcement at all. It was never a thought process of mine. But when I graduated college, I had 11 cents in my bank account, and I needed the first place that would hire me. And now it's become it's part of me, and I couldn't imagine doing anything else.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
We were talking with some guys. I'm sorry, Steve. We were talking with some guys last night during that interview we did, and I was asking them, why do you want to be a cop? And one of them says it's a calling. And I think that a lot of people don't know they want it. You know, they don't have any idea they're going to be a cop, but something inside them tells them this is where I'm being called to.
Yeah, I agree to that. And it's you know, they give you why do you want to do this job? I want to help people and stuff. But when you first get into it, it's the cars, the guns, the job. That's what gets you into it. And once you get that out of your system of, all right, we can't fight everybody all day. We can't, we've got to learn how to do this job and work together. Then I think that's where the true calling comes, is once you have to use your mind. And the older you get, the harder it is to fight people. Obviously, I'm injured now from fighting somebody. So, we try to I've gotten to the point where we just try to do it as little as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Try to get that out of your system the first year.
Yeah. And then it's time to work and figure out, okay, this is, because I tell everybody it's 97% paperwork and boredom and 3% excitement. So if you can get through the boredom part and the paperwork, then I think you'll be all right.
Yeah, I remember a friend of mine.
That's true.
Friend was a game warden in Maine, like in northern Maine, and he said when we were asking him what it was like, he said, "Well, 90% of the time I'm bored out of my mind, and the other 10% of the time I'm shitting my pants."
Yeah, pretty much.
All right, Field, can you tell us about the most intense and or terrifying call that you went on?
Yeah, we had a call one night. They come over the radio that an individual was shooting at his dad with an AR.
Whoa.
Or shooting up in the air, excuse me. But they were arguing, and so our county is actually, it's either the second or third largest county in Virginia. So we have a lot of, and there's only at that time I think there was 4 of us working that night, maybe 5, I can't remember. But and so we had about a 15-minute response time. That's running lights and sirens, and we get there and they just constantly updating. He's shooting is all we hear, and he's shooting. So we get there, we're still going, and then they update us. All right, he's at the back door. Everybody's locked in the house. He's banging on the back door with a gun, trying to get in the house. So no, excuse me, I take that back. They say he's banging on the door trying to get in. So we pull up to the side of the house because it's in the corner, and the way we're coming, we really had no good way to get to the house without being exposed completely. So we finally get there, and I take cover behind a tree. And when they say he's trying to get in the house, I just assumed he was trying to get in the front door. And I knew he had an AR, and I shine my light on the front door, and there's nobody there. I'm like, oh gosh. So I start scanning the field, the opening, the front yard. They're probably on 3 acres. So I start scanning the front yard, and I don't see him. And all of a sudden I hear my buddy, I've got him at the back door. So we give him the commands, come out to us, show us your hands. Well, he's got his hands in the air, and he's got a black object in his hands. And, we're probably 50 yards from him at this time, maybe a little closer. So we tell him to get on his knees and turn around, drop the object. And we ended up taking him into custody without incident. But he had a cell phone in his hand. And my partner, he said, that cell phone would have come down. He said I'd have lit him up because, it was nighttime. It was dark. We already knew he had guns. He knew we'd been shooting at people, and he didn't put that gun down, that cell phone down, is what saved his life.
Yeah, that's got to be a terrible feeling, being on a property that big, knowing there's a guy out there somewhere with an AR-15, which, can really reach out and touch you.
Yeah. It was I tell you what, that was one of those moments where when you shine your light on the door and he's not there, it's like, it's almost like, when you've got a Pepsi and you pick up your wife's sweet tea and you take a sip of the sweet tea and you're thinking it's Pepsi, and it's just that feeling like, oh my gosh, where's he at? So
that's a great comparison.
It's that shock. It's that immediate shock and awe.
I live in a rural county it's rural in Washington State, and there's tons of guns out here, and you could just be sitting in your house and you hear boom, boom, just people just shooting in the field on their property and stuff like that. Is it the same out there with you? There's tons of guns.
Oh yes, it's guns, and it's guns everywhere here. They're Tannerite's not illegal here, so you'll be sitting outside, and all of a sudden you'll hear this like huge explosion, like 10 sticks of dynamite just went off, and it's somebody a couple farms over shooting Tannerite.
That stuff is crazy.
Yeah, oh man, there was some people near us that were doing that targets that had that in the target, and it would just explode.
Yeah, it's insane. We get calls on it all the time. There's an explosion that's gone off, and usually whatever area it's in, we kind of know who's got the Tannerite. They'll call us, hey, you want to shoot some? We get there. Y'all want to shoot some? And like, no, y'all just be careful because it's not illegal here.
Yeah, it wasn't illegal for a long time. I mean, it basically only detonates if the projectile's going over a couple thousand feet per second, right?
I think it's got to be a really high velocity round, like a 223 or something. I don't even think a pistol will do it. I think it's got to be a real high velocity round.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. No.
And you can't be close to the target. I mean, these things, they'll shake your windows.
Yeah.
As that goes up.
Yeah, I remember guys back home doing that at our shooting range, which was the dumbest thing ever because it was in the middle of a neighborhood already. It was grandfathered in. The neighbors were constantly trying to get it shut down because it abutted the national seashore. So they were always trying to get the national seashore over there. Like they were shooting lead into your land. So anyways, the president of this gun range thought it would be a good idea to load up like an old washer and dryer with some Tannerite. And, they blasted them on the 200-yard range. And, you could feel that all over town. I mean, I'm talking 5-6 miles away. It was like kaboom. That stuff is pretty cool.
Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah, that's for sure.
So, Field, can you tell us about a positive situation or encounter?
Yeah. A lot of stuff we do with the dog is really positive. Missing kids, people always ask me if I'd want a drug dog one day, and I tell them, I'd take one, but the Bloodhound is what I love because I would much rather find a missing elderly person or a missing child and that's lost in the woods somewhere. Instead of finding a kilo of cocaine or something. But we had one night I got a call to a neighboring agency. They had a rather green Bloodhound handler that he was just new. He was just new, and I had been doing it for about 4 or 5 years, which doesn't make me an expert by any means, but I had a little bit more experience. And I get there and he says, "Hey, we had a female. This is probably 8 or 9 o'clock at night." He said, "We had a female that was last seen at 1 o'clock leaving this house. She's about 22 years old. She has a mental capacity of about a 10-year-old." He said the last time they saw her was at the stop sign up here, probably 100 yards from the house. He said, so what he did was he took a scent article up there and he casted the dog right there at that stop sign, and he didn't really come up with anything. So I told him, I said, well, we know she left from the house. We 100% know she left from the house. I said, so let's go back inside and get another scent article, and we'll just try it and see what we got from the back door, because that's where she usually leaves, from the back door. So I cast it. So we sent up right there and we cast the dog in the backyard, and we ended up going down the road towards the stop sign that she walked at. Well, we got to the stop sign and took a left, and this track's probably about 8 or 9 hours old. at least. And we tracking down this road. Down in the middle, we have dogs on either side. We don't have a leash law, so we have to fight that battle a lot here. This is not a hugely busy area, but it was a small town, and this was one of the major roads in the small town. So, I mean, there weren't 100,000 cars going up and down the road in that 10 hours, but I mean, there was a good bit of traffic that had gone through. So we end up tracking, and we end up going about a mile and a half down this main road. Then we get to the kind of like the main intersection of the town where, that's the main strip of the town is right here at this intersection. So we cross that, go into the woods a little bit and take a left. And we probably go 100 or 200 yards, and we see her sitting behind a barn wrapped up in a blanket. She just quit walking right there. And I tell you, that was a pretty amazing feeling to find that woman like that.
I bet.
So that was probably the very heartwarming situation. And most of my terrifying stuff comes on these dog tracks too, with felons with white rifles we're tracking. But that was probably that's the one that sticks out to me the most, that I'll always take with me, that track right there.
That's very cool. That's very rewarding too. You said that tracks were 8 or 9 hours old. How long is a track in like that setting, like in a non-urban environment? How long are tracks good for?
Well, there's some people that'll tell you, we can do a 2-week-old track, and I'm not gonna say it's not possible, but I would really have to see it to believe it. My oldest successful track was probably that track. That was probably 10 hours. And when we do training every year, we train every month, but once or twice a year, we'll set tracks up that are 24 hours old. And these dogs will have no trouble doing it with a 24-hour-old track.
Holy cow.
That's the oldest track I've done. You're going through woods and it's grass, and, but that's 24 hours. We can usually get 24 to 48 hours. We can still probably come up with a little something. Obviously, as the older the track gets, the harder it is. Because what happens is those skin cells, as time goes on, then the wind and the weather will spread those skin cells out. So we work what's called a cone. So when you see these dogs working, they go right to left, but they're still moving in a general direction. They're working that cone. Well, that cone will just kind of get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then eventually, they can't pick it all up in a straight line to keep it going. 24 hours is, if I come onto a scene and somebody says, so-and-so's been missing, he went hunting in this wood line, he hasn't been seen since, and it's been 24 hours, I wouldn't be scared to give it a shot that we wouldn't find him.
What are some things you could do to keep yourself from being tracked by a dog?
Why are you asking that, Steve?
I'm just curious. If you don't want to share that, I understand.
No, to me, I don't think there's really anything you can do to track for the dog not to be able to track you. Because your skin cells are always falling off of your body. I think they say it's like 50,000 a minute or something.
Oh, I'm probably at 100,000. I'm a redhead, so I'm like real flaky.
So they, I don't think there's anything you can do. Now, there's things you can do to slow the dog down, circles and briars and stuff like that. But as far as not being tracked, and I'll give you a perfect example. You remember it was a few years ago, probably about 6 years ago, that those 2 Pennsylvania troopers were shot and killed, or one of them was killed at their barracks or at their station. And they tracked that guy through the woods for days and days and days with those bloodhounds, and they couldn't get away from him.
That's awesome.
And I think those guys, I think it was New York, they had those 2 inmates escape, where they had the jail nurse a few years ago help get them out, and she ended up killing her husband or something like that. This is all vague memory, but those guys, they said they used pepper and stuff like that. I just don't see it happening. I mean, these dogs can differentiate millions of smells, it's millions of scents out here in these woods. Animals, decay, leaves, dying animals, bird crap. I mean, everything. If you just think about what's out there, every little thing's got that smell, and he's differentiate these little tiny microscopic skin cells. I mean, I don't think there's anything you can really do unless you can figure out a way to keep those skin cells from coming off your body. And I don't think you'd be able to.
Maybe like a Tyvek suit with like duct tape around the head.
Maybe one of those biohazard suits that they wear that, nothing gets in or nothing gets out. But, they have those suits that people wear that they go hunting that say that they make your skin cells. So I just don't, I've never tracked somebody with one of those, and I'd like to, but I just don't see it. I find it hard to believe that it might slow them down, but I think ultimately at the end, these bloodhounds are so good at what they do that they're gonna find you, or they're gonna have a good direction of travel. So that's our problem is if somebody jumps and runs on us, there's times where they got an hour head start on us. So we're usually, unless they hunker down, we're not going to find them unless they got a good, if we can get a good perimeter set up and you're still in that patch of wood, you're dust. We're going to get you. There's no doubt.
I read an article one time where it said dogs' noses are kind of, they're designed in a specific way that they breathe in, and then the little things on the side, it's something weird where the dogs' noses are unique to be able to differentiate all those smells and everything. Is that true?
Yeah. They've got their smell is about 45 to 50% better than ours. So so we present that skin cell shirt to them, and that smell kind of gets stuck in what you're talking, those little grooves in their nose, and everything else just kind of goes over it. I've been told, and I probably should know this, but they've got like 4 miles or 3 miles of those olfactory cells or nerves in their nose. And that's just how much they can take in. There's no telling what they can smell. I always, when I go to do a demonstration, I always say, who likes spaghetti? And if that dog could talk to us, he could tell us each individual ingredient in that spaghetti.
It makes sense. Like you see him smelling poop and you're like, that's disgusting, but he can probably smell every individual food that was eaten in that poop.
Yep. Yeah. And I don't know how I've often wondered like how they don't gag sometimes. Cause I mean, I've had to use a diaper. We had a missing kid one day and the house was so disgusting. I mean, I've never been in a house this bad. I came out of the house gagging and throwing up in the front yard, piles of trash on the wall, poop inside from the animals. I mean, it was awful. And I asked them, I said, well, because see, when we come up on a situation like that of a missing person, we have to get a scent article that hasn't been touched. So what we do is we ask, all right, do they have their own laundry basket? And how many people? It's hard to find a pure scent article of somebody in a house, especially a house where a bunch of people live in. Because like my house, my kids, they all sleep in the same bed, jump from bed to bed, all sit on the couch, touch the same tablets. So the diaper is about the only thing that my kids don't touch that somebody else that could still be laying on the floor. So that's what happened. There was a diaper laying on the floor, and I used that as a scent article. And my dog didn't find them, but we found them about 40 yards past where we ended that night. It was a young kid missing for about 4 or 5 hours. But yeah, it's amazing how well their nose is. And I tell everybody there's a reason why bloodhounds have been tracking people for over 100 years in law enforcement.
Yeah.
And if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Absolutely, man. Now I got to ask you, have you been worried for your dog a lot? Like I know with the other dogs, they're kind of bite dogs. So at the end of a track, they might, when you're looking for a bad guy, the dog is definitely gonna be intimidating and go after someone. But with a bloodhound, like we were saying, that might not be the case. So do you get worried for him sometimes that like someone's going to hurt him or take advantage of that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I do care for the dog and I worry about the dog. But I try to think about it as realistic as possible. This probably sounds morbid and awful. And I love this dog to death, and he's he's basically a pet to me. But if it's me or him, I'm sorry, buddy, about your sacrifice. Thank you for your service. And, we're always going to remember everything you've done for us.
Of course.
But, I try to keep it as realistic in my mind as possible that, I'm not saying something bad wouldn't happen to the individual that hurt him, because, if he shoots my dog, then he's an obvious threat. So we have a good cover team is what I like to, we got 2 or 3 guys that come with us, and they know what to do. I mean, we've been on tracks where you turn around and somebody's in the woods with a gun, you turn around and either the 2 guys walking with you are talking about what they're going to do later on that evening, or they're nowhere to be found in the woods. That has happened in the past. But I've had this dog. I've had a Bloodhound for about 6 or 7 years, and my department, I've really instilled on things that we need to do to be better with the dog, and they listen, and I've got a lot of guys at the department that will help me, and they do. They do exactly what's asked of them, and that's how we get more success. Than we, cell phones are the hardest thing that have killed bloodhounds, because people always call and get picked up. But as far as somebody, running through the woods with a rifle or a dangerous suspect, we treat it like anybody else. Now, we have had situations. We had a guy. We had a domestic. We had a bunch of warrants on, and he took off running in the woods. He had a shotgun and a rifle and a pistol. So we started tracking, and we actually found the pistol. The dog, my last dog was a gun magnet. If there was a gun in the woods, he would come out with it. He'd walk the track with the gun in his mouth, or he'd put it in his mouth, and we'd have to get the gun out of his mouth.
Wow,
that's a little scary at times, because
yeah.
Those gun dogs, they sit next to the accelerant or whatever it is they're looking for, but the Bloodhound has no idea what he's got. So I have had to pull a gun out of his mouth once or twice before. But I just instill, we've got a great cover team that'll come on those hot calls. We won't take people in the woods that don't want to go in the woods. And I have found that if you find guys that want to go in the woods with you and don't mind going, you've got a really good cover team. And the guys that I work with, especially the guys on my shift, they've gotten earfuls from me. Probably a little bit too much at times about things that they should have done or we should have done. But I can't say anything better about the guys that I work with on my shift. They know exactly what to do when they get to a call. They know exactly how to stage. They know exactly what to do with a perimeter, and they know don't touch anything until I get there. And I pretty much got them trained well. That we've had a lot of success that way.
Yeah, I bet that's important that they're listening to you and you're all able to work together like that. I mean, I know from working with canine handlers, I know you guys are tenacious. Like, you have to be as tenacious as the dog. So I've been on tracks in the rain in the woods where the guy's throwing the dog over a fence, and he's hopping the fence, and I'm like,
oh, yes.
I'm behind him. Like, on this particular track, I've mentioned it before, I think, but it was a Malinois or whatever, Malinois, and it had already bitten another cop. So he's like, don't use your flashlight and don't get too close, but don't get too far behind. And we're looking for this violent dude. I'm like, oh, this is like a nightmare. But yeah, they were nuts when they came out of the woods. They're like, his uniform's destroyed and the dog's crazy. And
yeah. And that's a good thing about the Bloodhound too. That's the advantage we've got. I can have guys right up on me. I can have them in my back pocket, and we just go in, because that's how we train with these dogs. These dogs, when we train them, and as we're going through training, they're used to 6, 7, 8 people walking behind them. So that's nothing new to them. When we have a bunch of guys in the woods, we'll have 3 or 4 guys, and like that guy I was just telling you about that took off running. We actually ended up going through a swamp and swimming a creek 2 or 3 times. And
oh my gosh,
we ended up finding that guy. But on that particular situation, we've got a trooper, a Virginia State Police trooper, that his dog at the time was very non-dog aggressive, but he was very people aggressive. So my Bloodhound and him got along pretty well. I mean, I would never let them play with each other, but my Bloodhound would go and he would track, and if we got to the end of the track where we found the suspect, then we would that's when the state police patrol dog would come in and give the commands. And unfortunately that day he didn't get to do it because we just happened upon the guy. We turned a corner and he was sitting there, and it kind of threw us all off guard because we weren't expecting it. But yeah, so we've got that relationship with other dogs. We train with patrol dogs. We train with bite dogs. That way, if we do get in a situation where our dog, we got a highly dangerous person, well, a lot of guys will tell you we want the Bloodhound to go in first, and then they just bring the dog with us, and they stay 20, 30, 40 yards behind us. And then if we get into something, then we can quickly transition.
Very cool. Field, do you have any advice that you would give to new police officers or candidates coming on the job?
Yeah, I tell you, I thought about this a lot, and I know all the guys that you get interviewed. I've listened to probably almost every one of your interviews.
Oh, nice.
And I think that this is probably the one thing where every officer or deputy has said they thought about this a lot, and myself as well. And I'll never forget when we were in academy, our instructor, he said, "All right, pull out a piece of paper and make a timeline." So we go in there and make a timeline. He said, from the time you were born to the time right now sitting in this room, he said, I want you to put monumental moments in your life on it. So, obviously, the fifth birthday where I got a dog, and, when I turned 16, I got my first car. Some guys, lost my virginity when I was, this age. And, the day I got married was another, some people would put, the day their parents died, or, just timeline of your life of extraordinary moments in your life. And, the day my kid was born, well, he said, well, let me tell you about another timeline. And this stuck with me more than anything I think I've ever learned in the academy. He said, we have a girl. She was 8 years old. She was raped by her uncle. He said, when she was 12, she had a kid with her by her other uncle. And when she was this age, she, got almost killed because of a meth addiction. She was this age, she got abused. This age, she got this. And, all the way up to she was like 21. He's like, and then she was killed at 21, brutally killed by an ex. And he said, always remember that these people out here that you deal with, their timeline is completely different than yours. He said, and if you can remember that, you'll understand maybe sometimes why they act like they do, and why they're not respectful, or why they keep making these poor decisions over and over and over again. And, like I'll go back to what I said earlier, we've got 3 kids that we've adopted, and our oldest has a timeline that's not good. And that has really put it into perspective that where some of these people that we deal with come from, it's not where we come from. We come from, and some officers and deputies, I will say, do come from pretty tough lives growing up, and they're exceptional officers and exceptional deputies. But for the most part, a lot of people, especially now coming into the job, have college degrees. I'm not saying bad things didn't happen in their life, but they don't have this timeline of all these all these abusive patterns. And that's always stuck to me. If you can remember why you're doing this, and if you can remember that their timeline is probably a lot worse than your timeline, and you can have just a little bit more patience with them and understanding and empathy, then you can go a long way with that individual and get more out of it.
Yeah, man, that's a really powerful visual, just to look at someone's life like that. I like that.
Yeah. I'll never forget that. That's, I've forgotten a lot of things in the academy. The thing with the regional, go to the academy, do it the way they teach you, and then come back here and we'll teach you the way we want you to do it, kind of situation. But that one thing right there always stuck with me. Remember their timeline. And if you can remember their timeline, then, or you can understand that they've got a different timeline, then you can you can go a lot further with them.
That's very cool. Ken, do you have any more questions for Field?
No, I just, it's just amazing. I love dog stories, so.
Oh, I know this stuff fascinates me.
I think this is our.
I've got now.
Is this our
now dog stories? I can get you. We can do another episode on just nothing but dog calls if you wanted to one day.
Hell yeah, absolutely.
I got I've got 7-8 years worth of dog calls.
Absolutely. I'd love to have you back on, man. I think the canine stuff to me is just so fascinating.
Yeah, I love it too. And
good.
I was gonna say I love it too. And the cool thing is everybody always says, "What kind of dog you have? What kind of dog you have?" And I tell them a bloodhound. They kind of take a step back, and it's not the traditional. Everybody thinks that we call them the pointy-eared dogs. I don't have a pointy-eared dog, but it's definitely it's definitely an awesome community that we get to be in, and you kind of have a camaraderie and a brotherhood inside of a bigger camaraderie and brotherhood.
How long do the dogs stay in service typically, and do you guys get to, once they retire, do you take them home with you?
Yeah, my last dog, he ended up getting a growth on his heart. So in 2018, I went to get my dog out to certify one day, and he looked bloated. He had 5 pounds of fluid. He ended up having 5 pounds of fluid on his heart, chest, and lungs, and stomach. And so we retired him that day. And he stayed. The one I've got now, he actually came from a company. Well, it's 501c3 in Florida that they take bloodhounds and they train them. So they get them when they're about 8 weeks old, and they take them from about 8 weeks to a year, and they take them that 10 or 12 months, and they train them. They actually give them to law enforcement agencies in the country. They just say, "Here, we're going to give you this dog," and because it's called Find M Friends, and so they take them then, and then we get them, and they last. You can get 10 years. I think 10 is a reasonable age for these dogs, and I think the bloodhounds can probably go a little bit further because those pointy-eared dogs are so high strung that they can wear their hips out more. My dog, he doesn't jump around in the pen. He doesn't hoot and holler all day. I mean, I've been outside this whole time, and he hasn't made a sound. He's been looking at me. He's laying down in the sun, sunbathing. So I think you can get a little bit more time out of these bloodhounds just because they're so lazy, and they're just the only time they get excited is when it's time to go to work.
Mm-hmm.
So they are beautiful dogs.
They keep all that in. So I'd say probably about 10 years we can get out of a dog.
And they're huge, right? They get it like to 100 pounds, don't they?
Well, it's kind of funny. So mine's probably around 70. So to go back to this company or this agency or place that gave us this dog, the woman that trains them, I hope you don't mind me giving them a shout out or whatever you want to say, but
please.
Her name is Linda Bowles, and she's a tiny woman. Well, she doesn't want to pick up huge dogs while she's training these dogs and throw them over fences. So she has like 3 or 4 breeders that she uses that know she wants a smaller dog. So actually the dogs that we get from her are smaller dogs, which is, as handlers, is nice on us because I have seen some 120-pound just bullheaded monsters out there that just will drag you through the woods and pull your arm. I mean, I've heard of so many guys getting rotator cuff surgery because these monsters of dogs just jerk their arms out of socket all the time. So that company, they do a very good job of taking these dogs and finding the best ones, and they train them. Everything's free. And then they see you off with this dog. You go down there and train with them in Florida for a week and a couple. If you've never had a dog, you do a couple weeks, and they do a really good job.
They probably stay healthier too because they stay lighter, right?
Yeah. I mean, they're light. Mine's got stomach issues. I don't know what it is. He has to have a special food that if he doesn't have it, I'm cleaning paint, diarrhea paint out of the kennel.
Oh yeah, that's
4
bad.
times a week. So I have to give him a special food. So that food is really expensive, but they're really, so they're such the dogs are, a lot of the bloodhounds are just long bloodlines. So, some of them do come with issues. And I think that might have been part of the reason that mine passed away so young, because he was only 7 years old or 8 when he died. We had to put him down 2 days before Christmas a few years ago. But, you know, as far as these dogs go, they don't, you know, they're pretty healthy though. And obviously, you know, we take care of them, and we get them you know, the moment my dog seems any type of sick or anything's going on, I've got the veterinarian's direct number. I shoot him a text message and see what he wants me to do. And sometimes he says, bring him in. Sometimes he says, oh, it'll be okay. So, you know, that's fortunate for us. It could be 2:00 in the morning, and, you know, I've had my dog come up on some drugs, and we thought he took some drugs, and, you know, the veterinarian came right in and, you know, and checked him out for us. And so at all hours, he'll come in. So that really helps keeping these dogs healthy and safe. Yeah.
My buddy had one, I don't know, 10 years ago now. He got a puppy. Man, it was the cutest puppy, that loose velvety skin. And
oh yeah,
I'd never seen
stepping on their ears.
Oh yeah. So
I love it
cute.
when they step on their ears.
I'd never seen a bloodhound before, and the puppy was amazing. And then he was going to try to get into a program. He wanted it to be able to track wounded deer so the meat wouldn't go to waste. He was trying to get the state to allow him to do that, but they really, really don't like dogs that track deer, I guess. But anyways, this dog died from, I guess, some common disease that bloodhounds have. But he said to me that they don't, the big ones anyways, they don't live too long.
You know, I have seen, I know one right now that's still in service, a good buddy of mine. His is still in service. I think his is 9, and I think he'll probably get this summer out of him and have to retire him. But
that's pretty good.
Yeah. And I have seen some that, you know, they retire him. You know, we have a buddy of mine, he had about a 120-pound dog, and the dog ended up passing away, you know, not 2 weeks, I don't think, after he retired him. It was just, you know, I guess it's just hit or miss, you know, with these dogs. Sometimes you get a great bloodline and they live to be 16 years old, and sometimes you get some that just live to be 10 or 12. And I don't know. I don't think there's a true science to know. I think you just kind of have to go with what you got.
So cool. I think Ken should get one. Ken, you have like
bloodhound,
3 or 4 dogs already. You got to throw a bloodhound in the mix.
Yeah, we got five dogs, all different sizes.
The bloodhound is awesome because you can definitely tell when they're barking, because they don't bark, they howl. They got that real deep bloodhound howl.
That's cool.
It's real funny. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, Field, thank you so much for coming on the show, brother. This was a really fun conversation, and like you said, I would love to have you come back for down the road for another episode. Just talk tracking. Yeah,
I'd be happy to. You just keep in touch with me and let me know. I'll be more than happy to. Just give me a few days and I'll go through some of my old tracking records, and we'll come up with, I got some good ones.
Awesome, man. I love it. Ken, are you all set?
I'm set. Thank you so much for coming on. It was a great interview.
I appreciate it. All
right, Field, I'm going to run the outro here, and it's just outro bumper here. It's just me talking and then the music.
Okay. Well, y'all have a good one, and we'll talk at you later.
All right, brother. Take care. Thank you.
All right, guys. Thanks.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you'd like to support the show, go over to thingspolicec.com. When you get on the website, there's a few different ways you can show some support. You can donate directly. You can do a one-time donation or a monthly donation. Even $1 helps us keep the lights on over here, pays our expenses for the month, is greatly appreciated. You can also just use our Amazon affiliate link. If you just want to buy something on Amazon like you normally do, just do it through our link, and we'll get a little kickback for that. So you can go to the website and do that, or in the show notes, I'll put a link. You can just click right through that link. And the third way is you can buy some merch. So we have coffee mugs, we have T-shirts, men's and women's, and we also have hoodie sweatshirts now. So go over to thingspolicec.com and check it out. You can also just listen to the podcast there, or you can apply to be a guest. Just scroll down and click on Be a Guest, and what you want to do is just give us a brief synopsis of your service, how many years you were on the job, and just a very brief idea of the stories you'd like to share, and I will get right back to you. So thank you for listening, and we'll catch you next time.